The court is now in session. Before we hand over to the prosecution, Mrs. Saikolvati, the greffier of the trial chamber, is instructed to report on the presence of the parties to the proceedings today. Mrs. Saikolvati. Mr. President, parties to the proceedings today are all present except Mr. Ingsari, who is present but in his holding cell. Mr. Ingsari has waived his right to participate directly in the courtroom for the whole day today. His waiver has been submitted to the greffier. The next civil party who will be giving testimony after Mr. Kum Wun is TCCP 28, and the witness is ready to be called. The President. Thank you very much. The Chamber would like now to rule upon the request by Mr. Ingsari. The Chamber is seized of the request by of Mr. Ingsari through his counsel, in which he has requested the Chamber that he be allowed to observe the proceedings from his holding cell for the whole day. Mr. Lam Sivutha, the medical doctor on duty at the ECCC, has examined Mr. Ingsari and indicates that Mr. Ingsari feels dizzy and finds it difficult to remain seated for a long period of time, and the doctor recommends that the Chamber allows Mr. Ingsari to observe the proceedings from his holding cell. The Chamber therefore notes the recommendations by the doctor and is convinced that Mr. Ingsari is mentally fit to observe the proceedings, although he has some physical constraints to be able to be seated in the actual courtroom here. The Chamber therefore grants such request. Mr. Ingsari is now permitted to observe the proceedings from his holding cell through video audio link for the entire day today. AVBOS officers are now instructed to ensure that the audio-visual link is connected to the holding cell so that Mr. Ingsari can observe the proceedings from there. Next, we would like to hand over to Mr. Co-Prosecutor. And yesterday, the Chamber was seized of the request by the prosecution asking for additional time for posing questions to the witness. The Chamber notes that the request and certain circumstance of this witness testimony is vital for giving additional time to the prosecution because the witness has insight knowledge of the relevant questions. The Chamber therefore grants such request by the prosecution. From now, the prosecution will have the whole morning session, including the lead co-lawyers for the civil party, to put questions to the witness. The Chamber will grant some appropriate additional time to the prosecutor when needed. During this period of time, Mr. Co-Prosecutor is advised to select the most significant questions and make the most of the time allocated. Thank you. You may now proceed.
Mr. President, I'm grateful, thank you. Can I indicate that I have selected now what the prosecution to consider to be the more important documents, so I have pruned the content of further examination, and I've also been in discussion both yesterday and today with the lead civil lawyers as to the division of appropriate time for this witness. Now, Mr. Kimbun, we yesterday dealt with a press release dated the 14th of April 1976. To remind everyone in court, that was E3/262. Now, for the purposes of my first question, my learned friends, the judges in the court, and anyone else following will in effect have to have one eye on that press release of the 14th of April 1976, but will also have to have regard to another document to put the question in context. And the other document, can I please quote? It's E3/380, Khmer 00357199, French 00485431 going into 32, and English 00365-644. Mr. Kimbun, for your purposes, I'd like you please, and I don't know if there's any documentation left from yesterday, but on document E3/262, I'd like please you to have a look at the page in Khmer which is 006222989. I wonder if Mr. Kimbun can be given some assistance with this page, please. It's, to remind, E3/262 and the page in Khmer 006222989. Mr. Kimbun, this is still on the press release dated the 14th of April 1976, and we can see on this page there is a list of 10 people, and on the list of 10 people, before we have the list, there is this text: the Standing Committee of the People's Representative Assembly of Kampuchea is made up of the following members. So at number 1, Nguyen Chair; number 2, Nguyen Kang, Nguyen Chair incidentally being described as President, Nguyen Kang as First Vice President, Piao Su as the Second Vice President, and then a list thereafter of members of the Assembly. Now, in one of the interviews with the investigators from this court, you set out a list of 18 individuals and you named some ministries. And when you were describing to the investigators your knowledge of these persons and ministries, in relation to Chair Sim, you said that he was Nguyen Chair's deputy. Can I ask, please, what information you were basing that assessment on? In other words, why did you think that Chair Sim was Nguyen Chair's deputy?
Response. I stated earlier that I was in the Youth League of the Communist Party of Cambodia I was not a member of the party, so my knowledge about the roles of the senior leaders is very limited. I paid very little attention to the radio broadcasts concerning this, because back then I paid greater attention into performing my tasks very well. The journalists at that time did not take good photographs of the leaders and foreign delegations into the country, and my knowledge was acquired from the broadcasts, the radio broadcasts, and my impression was that Mr. Nuon Chea was the chairman of the assembly, and Mr. Chea Sim maybe was the deputy chairman of the assembly. That's what my impression was back then, and I think it is true. Because during the CPK, the work division was precisely set, and everyone would know who did what. And in the government, if we did not pay great attention to the radio broadcast, then we would not be able to keep ourselves abreast of the situation. Because during the CPK, secrecy was the main part of the task, and indeed I was supposed to only know what I was supposed to do. If I had to go to the field, I had to focus on what I supposed to do. For example, knowing the development of the canal, the dams building, and rice paddy production. At that time, I felt that I did not pay great attention to the roles of the leader, but I can conclude that Mr. Chea Sim could be the deputy chairman of the assembly. And I can also confirm that this document does not belong to the CPK, because at that time the technology was not good enough for us to produce such printed material. And if we look at the structure, at that time, comrade would be used to refer to the cadres of the Khmer Rouge, but in this text they use only mut in Khmer, which means like friend, so it could have never been the document by the CPK. However, this document on my right hand side is the genuine document of the Khmer Rouge.
Sorry, forgive me, Mr. Kimborn. I don't know what the document on your right-hand side is, being a document from the Khmer Rouge. I wonder if I can be given some assistance to have the E number of the document on the right-hand side. Just going back to Nuon Chea and Chea Sim, did you ever see the two of them together at any gatherings, meetings, or anything of that nature?
Response: no, I never. But I know Mr. Nuon Chea very well. I never known Mr. Chea Sim. I have heard of him. I was told by my friends that he was, or he could have been the deputy chairman of the assembly, and I can say that I did not know much about the role of all the leaders although I have very good knowledge of the role of Mr. Nguyen Chia.
Mr. Kim Vun, thank you. Can I just clarify on that then, that your knowledge as to the position or standing of Chia Sim was derived from what other people told you?
Response: Yes, it is correct.
Did you ever see any documentation at the printing house stating for sure that Chia Sim was Nguyen Chia's deputy in any way?
Response: No, I didn't. I already stated that the structure of the party or the standing of the leaders was not knowledgeable to me, other than the roles of individual whom I worked with, including Mrs. Yun Yat, Mr. Khieu Samphan, Mr. Nguyen Chia, Pol Pot. These individuals are known to me very well. Apart from them, in various ministries, in the propaganda ministry structure, I could have known other individuals, although I may not know other individuals in other ministries outside this.
I understand, thank you. Mr. President, with your leave, can I please next show Mr. Kim Vun the document which is E3/10, and the ERNs are Khmer 000630059, French 00491868, and English 000450501.
The President, you may proceed. Court officer is now instructed to bring the hard copy of the document from the prosecution to the witness for examination.
Sorry, Mr. Kim Vun, what you have before you is the front page of a revolutionary flag special issue, September, October 1976. Can you help me, please, on this, based on your knowledge of revolutionary flag? What sort of subject matter would there be in a special issue?
Response: Having looked at this copied version, it is a copy from the genuine Revolutionary Flag magazine. And as I already stated with regard to the printing house task, I was part of disseminating the information rather than publishing them. So I may have not had inside knowledge of the subject matters being included in the special edition or issue.
Thank you. Help me on this, and if you can't answer, then please say so. But in the time that you were connected with Revolutionary Flag, how often was there an ordinary issue, and how often was there a special issue?
Response. I stated already that I'm not clear on this, although I can confirm that these documents are the genuine documents of the Khmer Rouge.
Thank you. I just want to take you to the next page that's behind the front page in your pack, but to give the ERN numbers, Khmer 000630062, French 00491871, and English 00450504. We now have an extract from this edition, and the extract is headed Excerpts of the Speech of the Comrade Party Representative on the occasion of the Great Victory of the 16th Anniversary Ceremony of the birth of the Communist Party of Cambodia, and then the dates from the 30th of September 1960 to the 30th of September 1976. And then in the text it is said, "Today we meet for the great victory of the 16th anniversary ceremony of the birth of our Communist Party of Cambodia." Now, in respect of anniversaries of the birthday of the party, what can you tell us about such anniversaries, if anything?
Response. Each political party in each country has a date where they celebrate its anniversary, and I believe it is the case with regard to the CPK. I understand the content of this very little, in particular regarding the dates, the 30th of September 1970. So to go to the historical background of the party, it is not actually true. The party could have been established in 1950s, although I did not remember the exact date. Pol Pot would like to set this new date because he would like to free himself from the influence of the CPK, or other CPK rather, because he believed that by stating 1960s of September would be more appropriate, because the CPK would like to have its own independence and ideology with own leader, and they did not want to be affiliated with other communist parties, although historically the CPK could have been linked to other communist parties in Laos and Vietnam. And Pol Pot liked to eliminate the Viet Minh movement, and it was appropriate for him to change the date of the birth of the party. That's my understanding of the history of this.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to another subject, please. And the source document for this next subject is one of your previous interviews with the investigators, and so the number is E3/381, and the ERNs are as follows: Khmer 0035 7206 moving into 207, French 004 02 999, and English 0036 5529. And on this page you said this: dissemination about the purges of the internal enemies was broadcasted widely, both on the radio and in meetings, saying, quote, "If any brother or sister is involved, Ankar will forgive them," close quote. If you can help me on this, please do. If you can't, please say so. First question: what would a person have done to become an internal enemy?
Response: yesterday I talked a little bit about the white Khmer. In 1973, when I was at the liberated zone in Steng Trong district, at that time the movement led by Samdech Norodom Sihanouk was nearing to Phnom Penh, and there were severe aerial bombardments. People were displaced and they moved to the liberated zone. At that time, secrecy was really vital, and that's why the smashing of the infiltrated enemies would involve other movements as well. During the 3 years period, there were several other factions and parties. I believed back then that was the case. And according to the document concerning the internal enemies or infiltrated or bore within enemies, as stated in the black ink slogan, I remember the UN aggressors, enemies, and CIA agents infiltrated in the party, including the KGB agents who were treated as the enemies as well. And I was convinced it was the case. We practically endured hardship, encountered a lot of problems because there were fightings, because we were in the movements, and we also noted there were other movements from the troops that or members of the movement from the Tilki or from the Viet Minh, or the movement that backed by Americans. And it led to the event that Lon Nol was toppled down, or rather, it led to the coup d'etat in 1970. So in the movement, we had partners in war. In the war, Lon Nol people were supported, and they were never short of supplies. So in a nutshell, we can say that the rich people in the movement could afford more weaponry, modern weaponry, and for people who supported and led by the then Prince Norodom Sihanouk were poor, so they were armed with machetes and sticks and axes like that. So this phenomenon, the contradiction had happened long time ago, not just during the CPK. And the CPK had to be vigilant to control this. and the CPK had controlled several troops, or more troops as opposed to the Lonol's regime. At that time, Cambodian people themselves treated others as enemies or adversaries. Even the king who was toppled down from power appealed to people, Cambodian people, to go to the jungle of Maki to fight back. So people looked into others as enemies. I again feel that when it comes to military affairs or political affairs that are more complicated, it is not really my insights knowledge of this, because I was attached to only the propaganda section.
Mr. Kimborn, thank you. Just two supplemental questions, I hope, arising from that. In terms of internal enemies, was there a change? You've mentioned, you see, the Americans, and you've mentioned the CIA. Was there a change in the identity of the internal enemies from before the 17th of April 1975 to after the 17th of April 1975?
I do not understand it very well, but in my observation, those who were defeated did not surrender. They continued to resist. So during the entire period of 3 years, they did not really agree with the communist political lines. Actually, the party was a mere symbol, but underneath they wanted something different, because the regime at that time was not like the one we are enjoying now. In the current regimes, we opens our door and we welcomes our foreign friends. But during that period, they organized their strategies that was to turn Cambodia into communism. But communism that was the transition from the monarchy and then the republican, and eventually the communist country, then you could imagine the conflicts, the contradictions in terms of ideologies and strategy. You may be able to imagine it yourself. I do not want to elaborate on that, but if you take all of those historical involvement into considerations, there would be a lot of contradiction between the left wings, the communist bloc and the capitalist bloc, and so I did not understand it in detail, but it was my sole analysis that the situation at that time was too complex. And according to the upper authority, they identify enemies into 3 categories. And what criteria did they employ in order to categorize those enemies? For example, CIA agents. I did not understand back then what CIA agents were. Sometimes they refer CIA agents as Vietnamese agents, but actually Vietnamese were the Vietnamese and CIAs were the Americans, and Soviet people were the KGB. But at that time, I was the son of the farmers. I did not understand that much, and I think that people, ordinary or grassroots people at that time, did not understand that either. And when we studied or attended the political trainings, we only studied the warfares and enemies in general, but they did not clarify what were considered CIA's agents, what were considered KGB I did not understand. I could only understand it later on after the regime. For example, Yuan. Yuan was not the contemptible word for the Vietnamese, but some people construe this word as something contemptible for the Vietnamese. But actually it was the traditional word describes the Vietnamese. For example, we call Thai people as the Siem, or Vietnamese people as the Yuan, and Laos people as Liu. So when I use Yuan in this context before this chamber in my testimony, it does not mean that I am expressing my contempt against the Vietnamese people. It was not the derogatory remark against the Vietnamese. So I apologize for the chamber if I fail to use the full name of the country, for example, the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. So, for example, in our context as well, I normally refer this country to Khmer instead of Cambodia. Actually, people would use Cambodia in general.
Mr. Kim Bun, what was your source of information to lead to you just telling us that the Lon Nol soldiers didn't surrender?
I went to the bases and I could have the feel of it. I went to the northwestern zones and I could understand the situation on the ground. Actually, security matter was not my responsibility. I was not in charge of spying anything at all because it was not my responsibility. I once told Minister Jun Jat and then she warned me that it was not my responsibility. I should pay attention to agricultural works as well as the reconstruction of the country. As for the overall situation or so, it was not my responsibility. And of course, there were some hiding of the weapons and other stuff among the people over there, and the popular mass at that time knew it, but I could not say anything because I was not supposed to know anything aside from my main responsibility. So that was the resistance forces. For example, the Khmer Rouge soldier who went to the I wanted to go to the Bang Levere. I wanted to go back to my former base in Stung Trong. They told us that we could not go to sector 304 because they told us that there were the presence of Vai Khmer over there. So that was the situation back in 1973. So I was not allowed access to that area. Another example, I went to the west.
Please forgive me. And please forgive me, everyone in court. But Mr. Kim Bun, please forgive me. I know I've interrupted you, but can I say that my time for questioning you is being limited by the court? And please forgive me for the interruption, but I wonder if I might be able to just move on to another question, please, if you don't mind. In the context of what you just said this morning, you've used the word smash. Now, I wonder if you could answer this fairly briefly, please, if possible. What did the word smash mean to you?
The word smash was used back then to refer to the crushing beneath of anything. For example, if it is a document and if we wanted to destroy it or get rid of it, then we smash it away. But in the battlefield, the word smash means to attack any base or so, and we have to resort to using military forces in order to destroy that location. So in the battlefield, we have to be vigilant and consider the other opponent as enemy. So we had to smash them. That was the meaning of that time.
Thank you. Now, going back to the extract that we started on, in other words, dissemination about the purges of internal enemies being broadcasted widely, is this broadcasted on the radio or broadcasted in some other way?
Are you referring to the period, the 5-year period before 1975, or during the Democratic Cambodia period?
During the Democratic Kampuchea period.
I did not understand the plan to smash the enemy, because it was the decision of other people.
Mr. Kimbam, I'm not asking whether you knew about the plan. Let me put the question this way. After the 17th of April, 1975, did you ever hear a broadcast where the broadcaster was saying, in the context of internal enemies, if any brother or sister is involved, Angkar will forgive them?
Well, actually, I did hear about that. Even my family members also had problems. And I learned it from the minister who disseminated information in various political training sessions.
Thank you. I just want to ask this then, going back to the quote. Broadcasted widely, both on the radio and in meetings. So just concentrating on and in meetings. What meetings was it, please, when this subject came up? What sort of meeting? Where?
The meetings refer to political training sessions, or sometimes there were ordinary meetings, but in certain special circumstances there were extraordinary meetings. And those meetings was meant to disseminate information. Of course, went to different parts of the country, to the northeast and other corners of the country, but once the situation was looming, the leaders and I myself felt that we must not go out arbitrarily, because there were many factions in the country and we could not know who was who. We did not know who were our enemies and who were our friends. And if we make it by way of analogy, the water was already dirty, so everything was being mixed up. So I did not see whether or not there was water, crabs, or fish in the water. I cannot really see because the water was no longer transparent, and I had constant fear within myself, and the fear stemmed from the possible allegation of problems or so. I did not have any problem myself, but as for my family members, they had problems, so they had to be vigilant, and they had constant fears all the time.
Mr. Kimborn, in terms of the meetings where vigilance was mentioned, were these meetings just within the Ministry of Propaganda, or did you go somewhere else where that was mentioned?
To my recollection, that was mentioned in my ministry. That was disseminated by the minister herself. And in other ministries, in those political training sessions, there could have been this dissemination as well. This was not something that everyone had to take it lightly, but it was a serious matter that everyone has to raise their vigilance.
Thank you. I'd like to show you next, please, a document. The document is E3/11. ERN's Khmer 000631116, French 00492795, and English 00486212. Mr. President, can I please have leave for that document to be presented to the witness?
The President, you may proceed. Court officers is instructed to obtain the hard copy document from the prosecutor and hand it over to the witness for his examination.
Mr. Kimvorn, the document before you is the front page of a revolutionary flag, special issue, September 1977. And in contrast with all previous red flags that I've shown you that have 5 flags on the front cover, this edition has one large flag taking up half of a page. Can you tell us why?
As for the change of the cover page from 5 flags to 1 flag, I did not know. I did not know when it was changed. I had no idea. But I can confirm that this is the genuine document from the Democratic Cambodia. I look at the font as well as the form of the letters. They belongs to the period.
Thank you. If we go to an extract from this edition, it's your next page in your pack, so still on E3/11, the ERN's Khmer 000631118, French 00492797, English 00486214. The heading on the document is the presentation of the party representative on the occasion of the 17th anniversary of the great victory of the founding of the Communist Party of Kampuchea, and on the occasion of the official domestic and international public announcement of the party. Now, can I ask the question in this way, please? When, after 1975, moving into 1976, say, did you think there was a connection between Angkar and the Communist Party of Kampuchea?
To my understanding, Angka and the Communist Party of Cambodia were used differently, but they were referred to the same thing. But Angka was used more broadly, and the Communist Party of Cambodia, on the other hand, was used mainly internally, and Angka was broadly defined.
Were you ever aware of, at any stage, any announcement to the effect that Angka was in fact the Communist Party of Cambodia, that they were one and the same?
I may wish to go back a little bit about the writing of the Funk. Normally, Minister Hu Nim granted me permission to change the word from the Communist Party of Cambodia to Angka. So during that period, I concede to my superior. I was instructed at the printing house that where there was the Communist Party of Cambodia, it was then changed to the Front or Angka. So it was my understandings that the meaning, it was referred to the same thing.
Thank you, Mr. Kim Bun. Next, please, I'd like to, with Mr. President's leave, show to you the full copy of document E3/169. Can I explain this was not one that was downloaded to the court before today. Can I hand you this document, please? And I'd like you to take some time, not just to look at the front page, but to look at the whole document, and then can you indicate to me when you feel you've properly digested this document? Mr. President, can I please present this document to the witness?
The President, you may proceed. Court officer is now instructed to obtain a document from the prosecution and hand it over to the witness. The President, I note the defense counsel is on his feet. You may proceed, counsel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do not object as such to the prosecution using this document. Excuse me. I would like to point out that it is the feeling at the defense that if the defense would try to do this, the defense would try to use a document that has not been put up on the interface before. We feel we would be kept from doing so. This is an informed feeling. Of course, it stems from events that took place last week, where we were time and again kept from using certain documents. We acknowledge that that ruling was later overruled, but we do feel that the defense at times is placed at a disadvantage. Again, I do not think that there's any reason to not have the prosecution use this document, but we would like the Chamber to apply one line, excuse me, whether or not documents are going to be relied upon by either the prosecution or the defense. Thank you.
Mr. President, can I just respond? I hope to help everyone in court. Mr. Kim Bun is a witness perhaps in a special category because of his knowledge of documentation during this period. Now, Mr. Kim Bun, in respect of this document that you have in your hands, can you please indicate and to let everyone know what the document is? It's a speech by Comrade Q Sampong, President of the Presidium of the State of Democratic Kampuchea, at the mass meeting held on the occasion of the 3rd anniversary of the glorious April the 17th and the founding of Democratic Kampuchea. Now, first of all, can you remember anything about this anniversary, the 3rd anniversary?
The President witness, please hold on. National Counsel for Mr. Kyu Sampon, you may proceed. Counsel Kung Samon, thank you, Mr. President. I simply concur with the position of the Defense Counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chie. We would like to hear the ruling of the Chamber, the President. Thank you. If we are not mistaken, due to the complexity of this issue, the Chamber has decided to review the filing of the document before the Chamber in the trial management meeting held on the 17th of August 2012. And we made reference to the changes in the previous rulings handed down by the Chamber in respect to the document put before the Chamber by parties. And the Chamber agreed that the defense team for Nguyen Chie may use one document that the Chamber was not granted the permission due to the previous ruling of the Chamber. However, due to the specificity of the document, the Chamber has reviewed that particular document, and then that was allowed. But then Mr. Canvas also put the question to the witness in relation to that particular document. So the involvement of the issue concerning the placing of document for examination by the witness was already ruled upon. And just now, the Chamber identified the topics in the last meeting, in the trial management meeting. There were a number of other issues that we have not been dealt with, but we decided to discuss the issue of placing the document before the Chamber in order to address the problems of question to be put to the witness. And that was intended to address the issue of the document put before the to the witness for questioning by the defense team for Nguyen Chie, and the Chamber has already advised the parties accordingly. And from now on, documents with the E number are the documents considered to be put before the Chamber. So, so long as parties choose the document with the E numbers, you do not have to identify the identity of the document, because those documents were considered put before the Chamber. And in this particular document before us, the relevant paragraphs use so long as the Chamber consider that certain documents are put before the Chambers, or that the Chamber deems they are appropriate, then parties may be allowed to use this document to be examine with the witness so long as the document is relevant.
The President, perhaps there could be some misunderstanding in the observation by counsel, and to clarify things concerning observation by counsel for the accused with regard to the document being put before the chamber or being examined by the co-prosecution, the document that is up on the screen now, we would like to hand over to Judge Lavergne to shed light on this, to be more precise. Judge Lavergne, you may now proceed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The prosecutor, well, we have understood from you, prosecutor, that you intend to use a document to question this witness, and it seems that this document is not in the daily interface, which normally proper practice should be to use documents in the interface so that all parties should know in advance the documents that will be used to question witnesses. So, is this the case? Is there a specific reason why this document has not been included in the daily interface?
Can I answer that question? The front page of this document was included in the interface in English. It was E3/202. So the front page of the document in English was provided in advance by the prosecutors. Having appreciated that that was a translation from an original French document, the French front page is now being put to the witness. I hope that clarifies.
Bien, donc,
So therefore, all parties were apprised of the fact that this document may be used through the interface. If such is the case, I believe there's no problem in using this document.
Thank you. Can I add as an observation, please, Mr. President? I wonder if the court might find it helpful if defence counsel decide to object at the same time and not when I've asked a question. But can I please proceed? Mr. Kimball, my last question to you was, do you remember the 3rd anniversary of the glorious victory of the 17th of April?
Response. In general, at my ministry, the anniversary of the victory of the 17th of April would be conducted on a regular basis.
Thank you. And what would take place on the anniversary, generally speaking?
Response. Generally speaking, there would be speeches by the minister concerning the victory of the 17th of April.
Thank you. Is the document you have before you an official document?
Response. Yes, it is. But I don't know where it was printed.
And do you recall anything about this speech?
Response. No, I don't, because I have not read the document, and I do not appear to recollect the full content of the speech, but I believe that it is more or less about the victory of the 17th of April. However, I also wish to emphasize that in such a piece of document, Khieu Samphan alone could never be the only person who contributed to writing the text. Khieu Samphan normally likes writing long sentences. So I can say that the statement could have never been drafted alone by the state presidium. It could have been done or with assistance of the upper echelon. However, I can't talk on his behalf. He himself can shed light on this.
How do you know that Q Sompon wrote in long sentences?
Response. I used to read some texts. The text meant to be broadcast on the radio during the 5-year period. Normally, we would receive texts submitted to us stemming from his writing, so his sentences were long.
Thank you. Staying on the subject of Q Sompon, there is on the case file, Mr. President, on your honour, so you know, there is partial excerpts, partial transcripts of what Mr. Kim Vun had to say to the interviewing investigators. And the first document I'd like to make reference to is D201/10.1. Now, Mr. Kim Vun, in your interviews with the investigating officers, you said this in respect of Q Sompong: "I was always with him during the National United Front." Is that correct?
Response. It was partly correct, because I was never always be with him, but I can say that among the 100% statement, I would say that it's only 3% out of that fact that I was with him.
All right, thank you. I want to move to your knowledge of, connection with Q Sompong after the 17th of April 1975, when you were working at the Ministry of Propaganda or the Ministry of Propaganda and Education. First question. Did you ever work in Q Sompong's department or ministry?
Response. No, I didn't. I worked at a different ministry, the Ministry of Propaganda and Education, where I worked. I had never met him. I met him once, but accidentally, when I was going out taking some photographs. So I can say that I rarely met him.
I just want to be clear on this, and please take your time if you need to. After the 17th of April 1975, is it correct that you only met Q Sompong once, accidentally?
Response. Yes.
Was he responsible for monitoring your work in any way?
Response. No, he wasn't, because I was at the other ministry, which was not under his monitoring.
Did you ever attend any study sessions when he was present?
Response. No, I didn't, and I never met him in any study sessions.
Did you ever visit the Ministry of Commerce?
Response. No, I didn't. But things that relevant to commerce, like transportation, the transportation of goods at the Phnom Penh port, I would go there to take some photographs of the people at work for the purpose of publishing in my work.
In terms of what you thought Khieu Samphan was doing, is it right that your only source of information came from colleagues of yours?
Response. Yes, it is correct.
Did you ever attend any meetings of the Standing Committee or Central Committee?
Response. As far as my right is concerned, I said no.
Again, going back to your interviews with the investigators, to the document which is D201/11.1, the particular page, Khmer 00833-795, French 00835-743, and English 00834-717. You said this: propaganda and education never saw him, and this is in relation to Khieu Samphan. Propaganda and education never saw him, and he never showed his face. Is that correct?
Response. Yes, it is.
You also said on the same page, during this period, after 17th of April, during this period, mostly propaganda related to Khieu Samphan. Is that correct?
Response. No, it isn't.
Can you please clarify what you meant?
Response. What I meant was that he was never present at our ministry because we were chaired by our own minister already at the ministry.
After the 17th of April 1975, did Khieu Samphan make any broadcasts?
Response. I already stated yes, and I noted that I could recognize the text to belong to him because they were of long sentences. That's what I thought.
In respect of anniversaries of the Great Victory, do you remember there being separate speeches each year?
Response. In each anniversary, there would be the statement or speech and I did not take notice. I did not pay attention to reading the speech, but normally it was the case that such speech could be used on each anniversary.
Mr. Kimborn, I'm moving on, please, now to questioning about your first wife, Chim Chineri alias Pon. Can you please explain to the court what happened to your wife in 1977?
Response.
Take your time. We understand the position. Mr. Kimborn, would you like me to carry on? Are you content with me carrying on?
Response. You may proceed.
You said in your OCIJ interviews that she was called to study and then disappeared for good. Can you just tell us, please, a little about what happened just prior to her disappearance and the day of the disappearance, please?
Response. Actually, I did not know anything about this. But before her disappearance, changes were, or she had been moved, and I also had to move working places from B25, Office 25 to Office 29. And I did not move to work at other two locations where my wife could have been assigned to work at. And as assigned by the minister, my wife had to work as the deputy head of the office at the propaganda office. She was tasked with reading the news on the radio on a daily basis. However, later on, she was removed and transferred to Office 25 to become the assistant to Mrs. Yun Yat. She was also tasked with compiling the biographies of the cadres at the ministry, and also she was tasked with teaching children. It was during that period of time that she parted ways from me. I still did not know where she would be invited to attend the study session because it was the ordered by the minister. The minister did not even tell me where my wife could have been taken to. I met the minister after the disappearance. I could never have the gut to see the minister before, but then I felt that I have nothing more to lose after losing my wife, so I had to meet the minister to ask why my wife was taken away to study sessions. But I was just told very briefly that only after she attended the study session for half a month that I could be told of the reason, and I was asked to go home. That's all I learned about the disappearance of my wife. And when she left with nothing. She did not bring along any luggage.
Mr. Kimbon, did you have a child with your first wife at this stage?
Response. We had a daughter, about 12 months.
What happened to your daughter?
Response. I don't know. I don't know what happened to her and to my wife.
Just so that we're clear, if we take the day after your wife had disappeared, was your daughter still with you?
Response. During the 3-year period, people with children would have to leave their children at the nursery or the children center. After work, they could then bring back their children. So I can say that my daughter could not stay with us. She would be looked after by a babysitter at the children center where she was kept at the old pedagogical school.
Since the day that they disappeared, have you seen either of them?
Response. No, nothing.
Did Yun Yat, at any stage after they disappeared, give you a reason as to why your wife had gone?
Response. After the live view meeting or study session and after my biography was written again, I was called to meet her face to face, where I was told briefly that my wife was a CIA agent. I was, as I told you, taking issue with that statement because I had been living with her long enough to understand her weaknesses and her strength. And we also attended study sessions, and we also distributed information about the 3 categories of enemy, so we could observe one another to believe that my wife could never been an enemy. And we I learned from her previously that she told me that her friends had been removed to do farming, and she said that she was no involved with any other agents. And she told me that she worked close to the center, and I worked close to the center, and I encouraged her to be strong because we were known by a lot of senior people that she could never be killed. The President, thank you, Mr. Witness, and thank you, Mr. Co-Prosecutor. It is now appropriate moment for the adjournment. The Chamber will adjourn for 20 minutes. Court officer is now instructed to assist the witness during the adjournment, and the next session will be resumed by 10 to 11.